introduction, I thought most everybody knew me anyway, either from the breakfast or from around town, or my hobby shop or whatever. I used to have a hobby shop, Bay-State Models, out on Robert Street in my cellar till about 4 years ago. And I've been interested in trains, I think, ever since I got my first Lionel set. Everybody had a Lionel set, right?
Yeah. American flag.
Yeah. And in fact, I sold, I got into this, I don't know whether you remember, if you're from the Phil and Lawrence area, I sold, set up and sold trains at Treat Hardware in Lawrence while I was in high school and college for a few number of years. So I've been in this stuff forever. And finally I gave it up about 4 years ago. But trolleys really caught my eye. There was a fellow in Haverhill, I don't know if anybody knows him, Bill Stanhope. And he got me interested in trolleys. I worked with him over at Western Electric. And he got me interested in trolleys, and that's where this went off. And I'm only going to talk about cars that I have here, and these are all cars that I've built, except for one. And so this is what I've been doing. The oldest car, or at least the oldest representative car here, is the so-called Type 4 semi-convertible, which is this one here. They call them semi-convertibles because they have large windows, and they could, these windows drop down into pockets in the side of the car, and they could open them up in the summertime and give you a little bit of air conditioning back in the days when they didn't know what air conditioning was. They liked fresh air in those days. And this was one of the first of the really modern cars. It was, these cars get excited when you pick them up, the poles go up. And
Not that old, then. Eddie's very good.
But this is the, this was really the first of the all-metal cars. Of course, eventually they outlawed the wood cars in the tunnels, and this was the first of the all-metal cars. And the nice part about these for model builders is that they made them out of angle iron and steel plate, so that they were very easy to model, except for the roof. The roofs were made of wood, and you had to do some carving and shaping on the roofs, but the rest of it was all angle iron and plate pretty much. And these cars, they kind of evolved. After they got these were built in about 1910. Laconia Car Company up in Laconia built the first of them, and they lasted till about 1950. Well, about 1912, they decided that they needed more capacity, and they came up with what they called the center entrance trailer. And it looked exactly like this car, except it didn't have any motors in it. And they dragged them around with these. These things were kludges. They were heavy cars. And they had a lot of power, and they had enough power, they determined, to pull a trailer. So they made a bunch of cars just like these with trailers, and they dragged them through the subways. Then a few years later, about 1915, the trailers came along, and then about 1917, they came up with the center entrance motor car. And those things, they called them the crowd eaters. Those things had a 6'6" wide door on them. And a lot of the pictures you see of them were over at the Braves Field. And they'd leave them there until after the baseball games got out. People come out and they'd pick them up with those things. They had 3-car cranes. They'd haul the crowds away, like, you know, with the, to get them out of the people out of there. And they worked out great for that. And they were a little strange. Instead of the poles going off the ends, the poles came out of the center, or came up from the center.
Personality, you know?
She's got me on Boston TV before you know it. So when they de-wired, they had to, of course, pull the poles back down and put them back on the wire. And they had these panels in the roof which would open up. They also leaked, which was another problem. But, so they opened them up. The conductor, who was standing in the middle of the car anyway, he could use with the rope, pull the pole down and put it back on the wire. And so that was, those things lasted till, I don't know, they lasted into the 40s, I think. I can remember seeing those in Boston. My grandmother was sick in New England Baptist Hospital. And I can remember going down one time to visit her, and I said, wow, there's a trolley! And I was just a little kid. I don't think I was 12 years old. And that was the first time I ever saw a trolley car there. And that really, really turned me on. And and these, as I say, they ran in them in three-car trains. They really moved a lot of people. And this one here, go back to it, I actually built 150 of these. And I made them mold, a pattern out of brass, and I cast them in epoxy. And so I ended up making about 150 of them. I think I've got 3 left, 2 or 3 left. So that got me started and made a little money for me to start the hobby shop. Everybody, once I get to this point, they said, well, where do we get the motors? Where do we get the poles? Where do we get the parts? Well, so anyway, I went to the next step and I started a little business in the cellar. I don't know, 2 or 3 days a week. And it was fun. And the only thing I miss now is the guys that used to come around and buy the stuff and talk. I had a few guys that used to come. One of them, I don't know whether you remember the name or not, it was Bill Borelli from Methuen. He worked for WLAW, he was an announcer. And he used to come in on Saturday mornings and have it was cold, we used to call it Holden Court. And the guys had a heck of a time. It filled up a cellar and everybody chatted for as long as they felt like it. Often I'd have a guy come in and buy something and he had his bag with him and he'd be hanging around and I'd say, you look at it, something else I can do for you? No, I'm just listening, he says. The guys, I don't know how the neighbors liked it, but I guess.
Terrible.
With the cars parked up and down the street.
Right across the street from.
Nobody ever gave me a hard time. So, this was another car that I built. I made about 75 of these. The reason I sold so many of those, that people wanted 3 of them, so I ended up with about 150 of those. This one here I sold about 75 of. And this was a Eastern Mass car, which eventually was sold to the Boston Elevator. When they picked up one of the branch lines, they got a bunch of the cars, and they sort of got those by osmosis, or whatever you want to call it. But they were, again, these cars actually at the end, if you went down Route 28 to, was it Reading? I think it was Reading. The end of the line was in Reading. And quite often you go down Route 28 and you'd see one of these things sitting at the
It's
end
kind of
the
right
line.
there on the North Reading line, I think.
Yeah,
right here.
yeah. They went through there's a reservation down there, like a park that they used to come up through. In fact, some of the concrete bridges, I think, are still there in the park.
Interesting door on it, that multi-pane door. Not too many like that.
Yeah. On this side, it had a single door.
Oh, okay.
That was where the motorman could get out if he had to in a hurry. And this was, of course, for more people.
Right.
These were sliding doors on this one,
Mm-hmm.
and they were huge. In fact, it's one of those in the shops right now up at the Seashore Trolley Museum being rebuilt. It's been up there for all these years, and they're finally getting around to it. They had it in the shop at one time, years ago, and they started on it, and I don't know, they got so many cars, they got I don't know, over 100 cars up there. And people start on them, and then they lose interest, and they go off onto something else. And then somebody will come back and say, gee, I don't want to finish that car. So they'll sponsor the car and work on it. But, you know, it costs a lot of money to replace, to repair these things. You're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars to redo one of these cars. And the problem is, they don't have a really good place to store them. And a lot of them are stored outside in the weather. And the main weather is not the greatest thing for wood and metal and steel. And plus, you're close enough to the ocean, so you get a lot of salt air and one thing and another. Hey, it's where they are, and it's where they're going to stay. This was another Eastern Mass car. That this one here, I bought the casting. Somebody made the castings for these, and I bought the castings, and all I had to do was finish. Although I cut it down, it was longer than this. And I cut it down to the length that I wanted, and made it more the size I wanted. There's another one here that's the same, similar car. This is a similar car. Does anybody know where that one's from? There's no name on it.
San Francisco. San Fran.
Georgetown, Rowley, and Ipswich. And we got into a big discussion on this one. There's a fellow from Cape Ann that used to come up all the time, and he was well into trolleys. And I said, what color was this thing? And I did find out somewhere along the line that it was pencil yellow was what they called it. You know the bright yellow pencils? He says, no, he says, I got a piece of that car. He says, when they burned them, he says, I went into the dump after they burned them and I got a piece of wood from that car. And he brought it into me and I matched it to this.
Wow.
But you know what happened? When they burned the car, the paint changed color. And that was the yellow that came out. But I tell you, all these stripes on here are all put on individually. And after I found out that it should have been a deeper yellow, I said, well, it ain't gonna change. That's the way it is. But that's a Georgetown, Rowley, and Ipswich car.
It's got the bigger windows. Looks like the windows are bigger than any of the others.
Yeah, they're, well, they're the same size as this one, actually, of course. But, yeah, you know, they did, but all these cars were made so that they could open them up in the summertime. And, you know, whipping along and getting some fresh air in them. And one thing and another. You go up to Seashore in the summertime and you can do the same thing now. Well, at some point, there's another car that I should have. In fact, I've got it started. It's sitting on my shelf, and it was what they call a Type 5, and it looks similar to this. And that was the next. When they built these things, they lasted about 25 years. And
Are they electric motors?
oh yeah, electric motors in, yeah. And they had, depending on the car, some of them had 4 motors under them, some had 2. But they were all electric motors, and when they really went into the modern age, and this really threw a loop for the modelers. They came into the 2001. This one here was known as the Queen Mary. This was the first PCC car. Now, PCC stands for President's Conference Committee, and it wasn't the President of the United States. It was the President of the conference of all the trolley operators in the country. And they came up with a new design, more modern design, more efficient design, new controls, and the whole works. And this was the car they came out with. And Boston wanted to try one. So there was a lot of them going through the shops. And for New Jersey. So they got one of the cars from New Jersey. And they brought it to Boston, and they ran it for a while. It never was successful. And one of the reasons they had a problem with it in Boston was it didn't have a door on the left-hand side. Boston's configuration of the tracks and the tunnels and one thing or another, you have to have a door on the left-hand side, and it didn't have it. So the thing, for the most of its life, sat in one of the shops, sitting up on barrels, just sitting there.
What year was that that they came to Boston?
PCC's 1937. This one came in 1937. Pullman Standard built a bunch of them. But there were different manufacturers that built them, and they were all a little bit different. Well, you can imagine working in the shop, and you know. They're all a
They
little
still have some of those cars running in Mattapan lines.
Yeah, the Ashmont to Mattapan line, there's still some, they've been rebuilt.
Oh, yeah.
God, I don't know how many times, some of them have been rebuilt.
They
but
put air conditioning in them now.
Yeah,
Are the trolley tracks the same as a railroad track?
same size, yeah. 4 foot 8.5 inches. So, when the Boston decided to go into the PCC cars, they came up with this, and they put a left-hand door in. And that was
Tell them why it's 4 foot 8.5 inches.
because that's the width of a horse's ass.
That's
Two
horses.
horses.
Yeah,
Two horses.
That's for the tunnels.
Yep. And those are, if you go back into the early days over in Europe, you'll find that the tire tracks of the wagons are 4 foot 8.5 inches.
They're wider.
And they stayed with that forever, and we're still using it. You know, that's the trouble with a lot of this stuff, when you standardize, you're stuck with it. You're stuck with it forever. And it seems like, you know, everybody's, well, 4 foot 8.5, well, that's the way it is.
What caused the end of the trolley?
What caused?
Yeah, I mean, why did they phase them out?
They haven't, not in Boston.
No, the grain line's still trolleys.
In fact, Boston was very fortunate that they didn't phase them out. A lot of cities phased them out.
Yeah.
But Boston, they're still using them, they're still buying new cars. Every time they go to buy a new car, though, they have trouble finding a manufacturer for it. Most of them have been coming in from Europe, because over in Europe, what they did was, the trolley lines got together, and they all bought cars every year. Even if they only bought a few, they bought them every year. So it kept the manufacturers in business. But in this country, they just wiped them all out.
That wasn't quite correct. What actually happened was Ford, General Motors, and Firestone produced a trust company that bought them up and then ran them into the ground intentionally so that the car would take over. And they did that systematically through the United States. There are only about 4 cities that didn't happen. Boston was one of them.
Yeah.
Cincinnati, San Francisco, but Los Angeles was totally wiped out
Yeah.
for that reason.
Yeah.
So it was a conscious effort of the automobile manufacturers and tire companies to wipe them out.
So there, you know, there are no real, off and on, there have been manufacturers in the States that have done it, but it hasn't been a real steady business, so nobody's really jumped into it. And of course, you know, these things are so, there's a lot of work in one of these things, and they're expensive, and if you're not sure you're gonna get another order, you know, it's pretty tough to go into business making something you don't know how long it's gonna be around. But,
Some of the trolleys I see on TV and movies, they look like a bullet.
yeah,
You know, all like pointed in the front, fancy.
yeah, well, the new trains are that way, look at these
I'm
stuff
in the
on
train, that's
yeah, the
right.
trains are that way, yeah. Well, of course, it's streamlined
Yeah, wind resistant.
and wind resistant and, yeah.
When was the first electrical trolley when was it? Sometime in about 1880, wasn't it?
Yeah, somewhere around the early, yeah, somewhere around the turn of the century, I don't remember.
Because I have an old photograph of a trolley in Dublin, and it was about 1868. It was the first electrical trolley
Down at
in
the
Dublin.
museum down in Connecticut, they've got one down there that's really old. It's got the motor up on the floor and the car
Wow.
inside the car, and it's one of the first.
Yeah.
Was it a converted horse car?
I'm not sure. Boston converted a lot of the horse cars to electric, and they made them multiple unit cars. They ran 2 cars at a time. And they were small cars. They were, well, they're more the size of this one. This is a Bernie car. This one here belonged to the Eastern Mass Northeastern Street Railway. And this is a brass body that I bought, actually, and painted it. And these things ran around this area. In fact, I've got a picture, somebody gave me a picture of his father standing in front of one of these, up at the end of the line in Rosemont. And it was a so-called Bernie car. But these things, a single truck, 4 wheels, and they ran like a galloping goose. They were just, by the time they got these things, the tracks were getting in pretty tough shape. And they were just, people got scarsick on it, just because of the seasick. It was so bad. So, you know, they bought there were a lot of these bought. In fact, I think we got 3 or 4 of them up at Seashore. And, but they were never popular with the riders. And there were a lot of these cars, when they finally got through with them in the United States, went to South America.
Where they could be seasick, right?
Yeah. Well, it's a different world down there, you know? Then, some of the cars, of course, ended up being work cars. This car here, you'll notice, is similar to this one. This is a sand and salt car. And they had, they put in hoppers in these cars, which could be filled through these hatches on the roof. And there were big hoppers in there, and they used them in the wintertime to spread sand and salt on the tracks. And a couple of them, I think up at Seashore, were sand and salt cars. And they are in really tough shape. You can imagine, these things were made from angle iron and sheet metal, and boy, the old sand and salt did an awful job on them.
Eat 'em pretty good.
And, but they were around for a long time. In fact, as I say, 2 or 3 of them are still around.
Question. Now, well, before my time, I heard some of the old timers in Lawrence, some of the trains, they had a thing they had to turn around. They had like a big thing.
Turntable.
Yeah, they did.
Well, that's why the
They had
trolley,
that with them too?
he didn't, because the trolleys had pole on each end.
Oh.
When they got to the end of the line, they pulled the pole down, went to the other end, put the pole up, and the motorman had a hand controller which fit, or a handle that fit into his controller, and he just walked to the other end of the side. So it was a lot easier than turning the car. Couldn't do that with a steam locomotive.
Turntables for the trains.
Yeah.
Do they plow the tracks with them things too?
There is, in fact, there's a snow plow, in fact, well, they've still got some in Boston, they've still got some plows. I don't know whether it's junk the last of them or not, but
Yeah.
they were talking about it, but there's, yeah, they did plow them. Some, these heavy cars like that one were great for a plow because they're so darn heavy that they could plow with them. Then this one here, this is the one that I didn't build myself. Somebody brought this in for a trade or to sell or something, and I said, gee, that's all done, I'm not gonna have to do anything with that one. And so I kept it for myself. And this is a freight motor. And they use these, the trolley companies, to make a little more money. They bought these things, or built these, and hauled baggage. A lot of the lines around the country did that.
What would one of these things cost back in those days?
Oh, boy, I can look it up here in one of these books. They were, I don't think I wrote down the price of this. No, I don't have it right here. But it's, if you're interested enough, we can look it up in one of these.
No, I'm just curious,
books here.
50,000 or something?
Well, they were a lot of money even in those
Those
days.
days.
Yeah.
Now they're hundreds of thousands.
So is it $2.5 million, $3 million a car?
Yeah. But, they weren't cheap. All this stuff was made by hand. But when, like I said, these here, you could build them out of steel plate and angle iron, and everything was flat. But then when they went to the PCC car here, these things weren't flat anymore. These things had fancy ends, and they had to make tooling to do the die work and one thing and another, make the parts. So they were streamlined and one thing, but it cost a lot of money to do it. This one, by the way, we can talk about this one. This is a double-ended PCC car. These were single-ended, and they had to have a turning loop at the end of the line. But this one here was double-ended, and Boston had a lot of lines where they were dead-ended, so they had to reverse direction. And they bought these from Dallas, and these were acquired in 1945 from Dallas. They bought 17 of them from Dallas. And there's so many of these around? I don't think so. Yeah, I don't think so.
Not that I remember.
They were
I
used.
would have scrapped them.
I'm sure you would have.
Penny a pound.
Danny Cohen wouldn't. Now, this one here was a motor that they used in the shops to haul freight cars around or to pull disabled cars or whatever. And they had couplers on the end so they could latch onto them and haul
Like a
them
switcher?
around.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I think we've talked about them all.
Did they have any work cars, like for maintaining the right of way?
Oh, yeah, they had what they call, the differential car company had made what they call a differential dump car. And it was a side dump
Oh,
car. And they had a little cab on each end, and it had like a big tray ran between the ends. And they filled it with rock, trap rock, or gravel, or whatever they needed. And when it gets, in fact, they're still making them for the railroads, and the thing dumped sideways.
Oh,
Then they had work flats, which were powered, and they had, instead of having a dump body in the middle of it, it had just a flat where they carry rail or ties or whatever they needed. And yeah, they were self-sufficient, in those days, they didn't have the trucks that they ran around with, they had to get there by trolley. They had cranes. Well, they still do have cranes. And they're all, mostly for track work and stuff, not that much for wrecks. Usually if they got something off the track, they do it with jacks and
yeah.
strong backs. Yeah.
Okay, I see all this, and I didn't realize it was that advanced back then. But now the auto manufacturers with the hybrid cars are going gasoline and electric, or a combination. So the technology is there.
For electric?
Yeah.
Well, these operate from a powerhouse.
Oh, all right, in other words, if.
They operate off the overhead.
I get you, okay.
And it operates from the powerhouse. On the electric cars that they're coming out with today, they're battery operated.
Okay, all right.
You couldn't possibly move a heavy one of these things with anything but a huge amount of power.
Okay, all right, yeah, the talk, high talk.
I was, this weekend, there was an article in the paper talking about batteries. Down in South America, they found a source of lithium. There's it's a lithium.
Lithium.
These batteries that they're making are lithium batteries. And they found a source down in South America where they've got these huge salt flats. And it's not table salt, it's lithium. And it's probably, it's the largest salt find that they found of lithium. I know it was there all along, but up till now, there was never enough interest in it to really mine it and haul it out of there. But now it's getting to the point where it's useful.
Okay, now, one time back, I think back in the teens, didn't some company in Amesbury make electric car?
Oh, yeah, there were electric cars made in Amesbury, there was some made in, there was a Newburyport, cars made in Newburyport, up in Laconia, they were all over the place.
Oh, it's not good. As far as electric cars.
Well, no, not automobiles, you're talking about
Automobiles.
automobiles, no,
Yeah, but
trolleys.
say, we did make an electric automobile in Amesbury at one time.
Yes, they did, yeah. There again, they didn't have a really good battery at that time to carry the thing forward.
I worked at Raytheon before I retired, and they had a forklift. That was bought by the mill before Raytheon took it over, the old company, the mill. That was almost 50 years old, and it's still using the same batteries.
Yeah,
And all, they called the company, man, I guess they gave them all kinds of money for it, they can't figure out how come it lasted so long. The company
Yeah.
that built them bought that thing, and I think they paid about $30,000 for it, just so they could do some research.
Yeah.
Couldn't figure that out.
yeah. The,
AT&T ran electric fork trucks all over the place,
oh, yeah,
battery trucks. And they would rebuild a battery by taking out one of the cells, went bad,
Okay.
put in a new cell, and go through it. I mean, there were battery shops that did that kind of thing.
Okay.
I don't know whether any of you people ever heard of this guy. There's a guy, he was born and brought up in Newburyport. And he's the one that wrote a lot of these books on trolleys. He wrote, I don't know how many books on trolleys. And that's where I got most of my information to build these cars. His name was O.R. Cummings, Osmond Richard Cummings.
We had the right name, at least.
And he lived in Newburyport. And in fact, I saw him this summer up at the Trolley Museum. He's still around. I think he's in his 90s now. And but he pumped these books out like crazy. They were all paperbacks, and he did it with another guy from Pennsylvania. They worked together on a lot of these. And you know, it's amazing. You look at the prices of these things. This one here, this book was $2. You know, and that had to be back, I don't know when this was published, 1963. And today, you'd probably pay $15 to $20 for that. And, but he did a tremendous job on publicizing this stuff and putting the information out there so that we can use it, and it's been a lot of fun.
Question, do you have anything on the cost of electric power, say versus a diesel-powered locomotive of carrying the same load? Was this still much cheaper?
Well, you know, there was an article in the Trains magazine, in fact, it's sitting on my desk at home, and it says, it's not too late to go electric. And they're starting to talk again about electric locomotives. Of course, there are some electric locomotives still being used. Well, the corridor is all electric. And there's a few mine railroads that are electric. So, you know.
Long Island Railroad used to be electric.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah, when
Yeah, I don't think
1940, I
that-
went to World's Fair, I think they were electric, or whether we.
Yeah, there's still a lot of electric around New York City. Because that was, the reason they went to electric was because of the coal and polluted the air. And I think
tunnels now, because you can't run diesel into the tunnels because of fires and stuff like that.
Yeah,
With diesel?
Yeah.
oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
it's
there's-
all electric now.
plus the fumes.
Only emergencies now that, you know, actually tows an electric vehicle that broke down, they'll send the diesel.
Everything I hear about is green, and I go to the supermarket, and every damn detergent and cleaner is green.
That's why they have the green line, Boston.
You know, and all the cleaners, you know, are all green.
Batteries, I use a gel cell,
Well, they told me to shut up by 10 minutes of 9, so I guess I can.